Well, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
This horrific act has just deepened an already huge divide in the United States of America. But if you were following media outlets like CNN today, well, you would have thought that Donald Trump had a fall. Look at this headline. Secret Service rushed Trump off stage after he falls at rally. You know, comments like that are expected from troll accounts, but politicians, well, it really gives us an insight into how dark and how ugly some of the thinking and some of the attitudes are, and also how much hate there is for Donald Trump. So let's look at what some of the Democrats have said in the past. Have they ever called for political violence?
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country. Maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized right, to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump.
What if this shot did kill Donald Trump today? That could be catastrophic, and thank God that didn't happen. Our condolences do go out to the people that have friends and family that were injured or actually killed today. It is a dark day in American history. Again, this day will go down to be remembered. And you know, there's something else that we have to understand here, that America is sick. It is ill. The President of the United States clearly shows that he is ill, but also the country itself is so divided that it needs to repair itself. America, this event is on you today, America, and you need to fix it. You need to solve it.
Alex, I mean, you say you're disturbed, Alex. I'm disturbed as well, mate. But you know what disturbs me even more? Although I'm so used to it by now, I guess I'm just jaded. The bloody Western media here, Alex. I mean, let me ask you. Some Western headlines ran for 2 hours talking about loud noises at a Trump event. And then they talked about Trump falling. CNN even said Trump fell over and he needed to be helped by Secret Service. I mean, I'm sorry, man, but the BS, it reeks so badly. I mean, do you think people see, like networks like CNN, for example, these lefty liberals who are saying, oh, they don't want to say assassination attempt. They don't want to say bullet. They say he fell over. I mean, mate, how do you assess that?
If they can't get us offline, they will try to shut down a normal publication. Whether it's online through messaging or whatever, they will do anything they can to push their narrative, and they do, even if it's wrong. Look at that. 2 times that they've tried to impeach Trump. That's from the government side. We've seen the connections with the Central Intelligence Agencies, the FBI, you know, Elon Musk's fight that he had to do with former Twitter, which now is called X. He's gone to extents. What if we didn't even have platforms like X?
Yeah, there we go. I think we're live. We are live, my friend.
We are live, everybody. Welcome to a very special live stream. My name is Cyrus, joined by Alex from Reporter5 Media. Welcome to Guangzhou, buddy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So we've decided to switch things up. We're not in our traditional studios. We are on the road here in China, in Guangzhou. Behind us is the Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hall. This is one of the most really sacred and important halls in all of China. Of course, Sun Yat-sen is a very historical figure. Actually, he came back here to actually start to reunite China. Really everything started here in Guangzhou. So obviously very big in, Guangzhou, in Taiwan. And here we are recording a live stream because there's a lot of things we want to talk about, Alex. We're going to talk about China, but in today's live stream, we're also going to be talking about NATO. We've got to talk about this 75-year anniversary, what we're seeing now with obviously President Biden, the moves. We've got a lot of things going on. We've got the South China Sea. We've got tensions rising up between Europe. Obviously, this Ukraine war hasn't started. And I mean, what's interesting here is, we're here in China, experiencing it live on the ground here. I want to give you guys also a perspective of, what is China thinking through all of this? And really, I think we got to buckle up.
Yeah,
because I think we're in for a very crazy finish to 2024, and it's only going to get crazier with the geopolitics.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen what's been happening here. The media over the last couple of weeks here has really gone hard on the Biden administration, as well as, is he capable of even running?
Yeah.
That's doubtful.
Well, you know what's amazing to me, Alex, is you saw this message from the Democrats because, it's almost like after the debate, everybody started coming out of the woodwork. Okay, Biden needs to resign. Biden needs to step down. And it actually struck me as very strange.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what have you guys been doing for the last few years? You've seen Biden, you've seen this trend, and it's almost like they got caught out of, this came out of nowhere. Like, we had no idea Biden was in this mental capacity. Where it's like, we've kind of been watching this steady decline. And, again, I mean, the gentleman's, 82 years old. It's not a young guy anymore. I mean, he has served his country for well over 50 years in the government. I believe that right now the Democrats are facing just a plethora of Category 5 problems that they've got right now.
And I think a lot of it's got to do with donor money.
Yeah.
The donors say, you know what, we don't have confidence in this candidate. We're pulling the plug. And now we're seeing them go public about it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it was, people waiting, donors waiting for that. Who's going to make the first move?
Right.
Who's going to put that shocking headline like, we have pulled the funds on this, we're not going in, change the candidate? Is it possible? I think it is. I think it is.
Let's talk about that, because I think it's a really tough one for the Democrats, because you're stuck in a very tough spot. Number one is, if you're going to pivot from Biden, you're going to have to go to Kamala Harris. Why?
Sure.
Because in America, it's all about optics. Okay, the reason why Kamala Harris was chosen as a vice president for Joe Biden is because she's a woman of color. It's not because of her accomplishments. It's not because of her experience. She fit the mold and she fit the ticket very well. I don't think she's been very experienced. She's not particularly smart. She's in how she's been doing her job. She doesn't have a great reputation. That's really reflected in the polls, Alex, where we see, she's trending worse than Biden.
Yes, of course.
And then, of course, now you open up a can of worms if you say, all right, we're going to overlook Kamala Harris and let's for example go get a Gavin Newsom, a white male in California. The optics are not going to look good, especially for the Democratic Party, which is, really built on diversity and trying to make sure that they're all about supporting people of color and things like that.
I think the pivot's going to be Article 25. I strongly believe that they might pull that soon, and just remove him and put Kamala Harris in. That way, she can at least say that she was the first female sitting president in the United States.
Right.
Then you go to the polls. We lost, but then again for the Democrats, they've saved face. They removed Biden. They fulfilled their donors' needs, and they had a first lady that was the president of the United States. It's a win for them, short term, but long term. It doesn't matter. The damage is done here. It doesn't matter what Democratic person for that party that goes in there. There's not enough time and energy, and the donors aren't there. So donors are saying, Article 25, time to go, Joe. Move aside. Harris in, sits in the office until November, elections come.
Right.
They crank it up. Maybe she wins, maybe she doesn't. I don't think so at this point. And we get on with it, because the damage, as you said, the damage is already done. They're in damage control. They've lost the donors. And now, they're trying to save face. They got Joe in there right now. It's not good. Not looking good, man.
I'm going to make my prediction. So I don't think the Democrats are going to invoke Article 25. And I don't think that they're going to replace him. And the sole reason is that I don't think, at this point, I think it's too late. If the Democrats were smart, they should have known this, and they should have had a contingency plan built in, starting 2 years ago, saying, look, Biden, you beat Trump in 2020. Great job. The Democrats have secured the White House for the next 4 years, which obviously they did. But knowing that you're going to be 82 years old and running for re-election, which is just inconceivable, because then now you'll be 86 by the end of that. No chance, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if he was, imagine we rewind the clock to 2 years ago, and it's like, hey, 78-year-old Joe Biden, we need to come up with a contingency plan, because guess what? Trump's running in 2024. we don't like our chances there. But I think at this point, I think they're going to have to just stick with Joe. I think it's going to be Joe. I'm going to say I think it's Biden and Trump.
We talk like Trump is 20 years younger than Joe, but they're almost the same age, right? So I think that the Democrats have no way out of this. The only way out, I said, and I'm going to stick by it, it's going to be Article 25. We're probably going to see it in the next 2 to 4 weeks. It will be more on a sympathy.
Right.
I could see, Joe Biden standing up there on the Oval Office or out front of the White House saying, I've served your country.
Yeah.
I've brought NATO together. I brought this together. I don't want to leave you, but I have a capable Kamala Harris, and she rolls in there. They will surge in the polls. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not an American.
Right.
I have different outlooks on the way who I would vote for in the government. Right now, my money is on the guy that has actually risked his entire wealth to make the country better. That was Trump. And I don't know.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I think for the Democrats, and what I think this election will come down to, Alex, is I think you're going to see a pitch from the Democrats. Their pitch is going to be Donald Trump is corrupt. He is he's not qualified. He's a felon, and therefore the ethical choice is going to be, this declining Joe Biden. So even though he doesn't have the mental capacity, which I think all Democrats are now acknowledging at least, they're going to just try to go on that more of a sympathy and say, hey, at least if you vote with Biden, you're voting for democracy and you're voting for that. That's the pitch that they're going to do. But I think the problem is, you mentioned NATO. Let's go ahead and jump into this because
NATO.
This was a big one. Because here
what
we have,
mess.
here we have, and this is an interesting one. You have NATO that just turned 75.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing with NATO is you see, I believe that NATO's reputation, along with the United States' reputation, has taken a massive hit in the last couple of years, and a lot of credibility issues here.
Sure.
Right? Because if you're a member of NATO and you're thinking, wow, we should have been able to dissolve this war in Ukraine relatively straightforward. It should be pretty simple.
Yeah.
Here we are, we're 2.5 years in, to the most recent escalation, which started in 2022. Of course, our viewers, they know that this started back in 2008. So this is not a 2-year war. This is a war that
another massive escalation in 2014.
Absolutely.
As well,
yeah. So this goes back, but even if you want to go back, it really starts in the 1990s.
Yep,
Sure. So it goes back. There's a lot of it's a deep onion, right? You have to peel back the layers to really understand these complex geopolitics. But I think you've got an aging Biden, you've got an aging NATO. What do you think of the spoken words from Biden at NATO?
Like I said to you, Cyrus, no one cares about these felonies with Trump anymore.
Right.
Everybody knows that these are, quote unquote, trumped up charges.
Right.
And those headlines are gone. And if he gets exonerated, if he wins on appeal and those cases get thrown out, boom, it's done. Like I said, these misquotes, these gaffes from Biden, you're going to see more of that.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think the Democratic Party, all last week was get Joe in front of the camera, get in front of the camera, get him out there. And they thought, gaff, 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 gaff. So I think, and I'm going to stand by it again, that they're going to pull back on this. Now, where does this set NATO in the stage here? As you said, 75-year anniversary of NATO. A collaboration of countries that maybe has a force of about 2.5 million to 3 million troops.
Right.
Sounds impressive.
Right.
But we have to remember that during this last 2.5 years, there's been a country that has its own military-industrial complex,
right.
and that is Russia.
Yeah.
And we have seen the depletion of many pieces of artillery or military, tanks or airplanes or Patriot systems. Those have been decimated by the Russian military. Now, I was talking to Scott Ritter the other day. Scott Ritter says, listen, this is still a military operation for Russia.
Yeah.
This is not a full-on war.
Right.
It was a full-on war. It's over tomorrow morning. But he was saying that, look, they've depleted NATO's hardware. Russia has built its military up. You and I were just talking about this before we came live here.
That's right.
Tell the viewers what we were chatting about when you were discussing about Russia's army.
I think what's really important for people to understand, and one of the big things in geopolitics is separating, fact from emotions.
Yeah.
And what I see is you have a Joe Biden that is older. that doesn't have a clear mental grasp. And, he addresses the NATO 75th anniversary. And what is his words? Russia will not prevail, Ukraine will prevail. Now, simply saying that, it doesn't really accomplish anything, right? It's kind of like, it's like, imagine we're playing sports again and it's like, we're down by 20. It's like, don't worry, we're going to win the game, but it's like, well, no, we're outmatched. We're not, we're going against a much bigger team that has a huge lead that is destroying it. And again, this is not me saying, hey, I'm pro-Russia, you're spouting pro-Russian propaganda. No, you just got to look at it objectively. And the fact is you're starting to see more and more U.S. voices coming out. Tulsi Gabbard, right, came out and said, this is the facts, okay? Russia today has more manpower and more military equipment than it did at the start of the war. They've completely changed their economy around. They've switched to a wartime economy. They've built that military industrial complex up. They've recruited more men. They have already tremendously amount more manpower than Ukraine, obviously, when the war started. They've recruited more, they've expanded, they've refreshed, they have grown more militarily. And meanwhile, Ukraine is the complete opposite. It has way less more manpower than it started. It has, a tremendous amount less of resources. But again, it's not really the resources because, again, at this NATO summit, interesting enough, at the beginning of the summit, they were going to pledge $100 billion more. Ended up being only 43 billion. So you can start to see some issues there, that member countries are, like how many more billions and billions of taxpayer dollars are going to be going here. And there comes at a point now, Alex, where it starts to become irresponsible if you are going to keep prolonging this war. Absolutely. If you know, in fact, that you can't win. That's the reality. And it goes down to that fact from emotion. Sure, on paper, the Americans can say, we want Ukraine to win. But that's just not the reality of the situation. And for the lives of Ukrainian people, it's like, the sooner you get to that negotiating table and you settle this war, the better everyone's going to be. And that's what has to happen, but it doesn't seem like we're going to get anywhere close to that.
And as you said, we have to be responsible here. And, it's not like we're saying, listen, Ukraine can't fight back. We understand that there's a lot of lives that have been lost here over the last couple of years. My friend Patrick Lancaster, who's been on Cyrus's program and my program that we just recently met here in China, has discussed he doesn't want this to go on any longer as well. Money is not going to be the solution here. And the more money that goes into this, the more grinding down Russia will take this. That is their strategy. There's no surprises. They've shown it. And we are talking that, that's why we do not get a factual amount of men that are either injured or have died in this latest conflict.
Right.
And we won't get that figure probably until it's long over. Now, the other thing that we have to understand is countries have been at war in the past, they're in the war in the present, and they will be at war in the future. Just take a globe. Look what happens to the actual globe in the last 100 years. Territories have been fought over. Look at the war in Yugoslavia, the breakup of Yugoslavia. Now, many of those countries are part of the European Union now. You wouldn't have thought that back then, but now they are. And now we have two countries that I think, and you made a very good point about this, is they haven't resolved their issues dating all the way back to when the Soviet Union did collapse. And I think this is we're seeing the final play out of it. And I think we're better to just say, you know what, guys, instead of pumping $500 billion into obliterating the next generation of men, trust me, no one wants to see any more Ukrainian soldiers die. No one wants to see any more Russian soldiers die. Sit down at the table. And there's one guy, I believe, in the European Union that is trying to put that together right now. It would be the Hungarian
Viktor Orban.
Let's talk about him.
Well, interesting quote. So, Viktor Orban, a very controversial figure in a lot of Western, media and certainly a lot of Western politicians. And this is quite interesting. I don't know if everyone is up to speed on this. So, inside the European Union, every 6 months, the Council of the Presidency of the European Union rotates. And on July 1st, 2024, it rotated to Hungary. Now, it's not actually Viktor Orban, the Hungarian prime minister that sits there. It's actually the Hungarian government. But that now means that Viktor Orban has a very large role, and he actually has a voice. And what caused a lot of alarm and why he was so controversial for many people is that immediately he said, I'm going out on a peacekeeping mission. And so what did he do? Well, first of all, he also went to Kyiv. So he went to Kyiv and he met up with Zelensky. He went to Moscow, he met up with Vladimir Putin. He went to Beijing and he met with Xi Jinping. So immediately he said, and then he went to Washington, D.C. to go meet with Biden. So you have someone that, in my mind, I don't think it's any controversy to meet with these officials. In fact, I mean,
he's doing his job.
I mean, if I'm Joe Biden, I would go to Moscow and I would sit down with Vladimir Putin.
Absolutely,
you have to. I mean, if you want to, that's what is just so ridiculous. A few weeks ago, I made a video about this. Is that they had the Summit for Peace on Ukraine. And it's like, okay, we're going to invite 92 nations from around the world to this conference, but yet we're not going to invite Russia.
Yeah.
The one country that has to be there because, sorry for newsflash, you're at war with them. So if you and I are in an argument and it's like, well, I'm going to invite me and all my friends over here to discuss my argument with Alex, shouldn't Alex be in the?
Yeah, you think so?
Shouldn't you want to be in the discussion too? So I think that what is really difficult, and there's a really powerful Viktor Orban quote that I want everyone to remember. It is that, what is it? It goes, China has a peace plan, America has a war policy, and the Europeans are just blindly following the Americans. So I salute Viktor Orban on that quote because I think one of the things that many people also don't know, Alex, is that, about 16, 17 months ago, China submitted a 12-point peace plan.
Yes, they did.
For this. And what's very interesting is that the big summit, the summit on peace in Ukraine, they actually took 6 of the 12 points from China's peace plan, basically just copied and pasted that into a new document and said, hey, here's our new peace plan. And China's kind of sitting there like, hey guys, by the way, we actually already had those. The first point on that, actually on China's peace plan, for people that don't know, was Ukraine's territorial integrity. So, that is the first thing that China said. Again, China has good relations with obviously both Russia and Ukraine. Many people don't know that they have good relations with both. Again, you got a guy like Viktor Orban who is saying, hey, I want to meet with Zelensky and I want to meet with Putin, right? I think we're going to have Tucker Carlson, who did that massive interview with Putin, now has been given the green light by Zelensky. So I salute the people that want to see both sides and want to talk to both sides.
Yeah, that's the only way out of this mess, because if you see and understand the approach that the Americans are taking on this, it's we will victor, we will go there, we will fight them as hard. Don't worry, Ukraine, we got your back. Well, of course they're going to say that. Of course they're going to continue to send more money. But what happens again, this just keeps grinding down. And then there will be a point where Russia is going to say, you know what, guys, this territory, we've agreed on it in the Minsk I, Minsk II agreement.
Right.
Probably part of those points have been put into this peace plan as well.
Right.
And I tell the viewers, you should read what was in that Minsk I and Minsk II agreement. They are very detailed. It's very clear who they're telling who gets what in that. Now, if you continually to push a nation like Russia against the wall, to what extent will you think they're not going to push back? This is a nuclear, very, very nuclear powerful country. It's got one of the largest stockpile of warheads in the world. I think if you take all NATO countries combined, you're pretty even. You're around 6,000 warheads. Now, what happens? We might all say, Russia would never do that. Russia would never go that way. Russia would never do that. If you're going to push a nation on the 75th anniversary of NATO, and you're going to take a collaboration of countries that throw as much military hardware at Russia, there will be blowback.
Right.
How big that's going to happen, I don't know. But we are seeing escalation continually going here. I don't see any slowdown. I'm seeing more retaliations for this and that side, tit for tat, and it will continue. Now, coming up near this election, I think we are going to see again another peak here. And mark it, this election's in November, correct?
Correct.
The 5th? Something around the 5th?
Yeah.
Okay, so around September, October, the seasons really start to change in the Ukraine. As we get into November, the temperature starts to drop. The whole entire electricity grids in Ukraine are on, fingernails there. They're about to go out. The lights are about to go out and the water's about to go out. And Russia is going to really hit those hard here. And that, I think, is going to really push these people to negotiate.
Yeah, it's a really tough one, Alex. And I think, what's really difficult about the NATO summit as well is I think that there is, quite an interesting one is NATO's come out and said, okay, well, China, you're the big enabler of the war, right? And that's why I wanted to make this live stream, live from the streets of China, because we want to be here. We want to discuss China and bring this in, because I definitely think that NATO has its eyes on China, the South China Sea, the Asia Pacific region. They've already said that basically Japan is going to be brought in as a conditional member, and basically treated as an ally as well. You've got a tremendous amount of tensions blowing up between the Philippines, China. The United States is heavily involved in that as well. It's a really interesting one, because we've seen there's a groundbreaking article that came out, right, that talked about how the United States government was basically running a disinformation campaign on the Chinese COVID vaccine, and really targeting through social media, and really targeting, Philippines, making sure that people thought the Sinovac vaccine was not good, it was bad quality. They wanted to target the Muslim population, in Southeast Asia, and also, the Middle East, and basically said, it's not, it's not halal approved, so if you it's similar to like eating pork. So, you had these, direct fabrications and just complete lies, which was so sad to see, because especially in a time where, the world needs to be coming together. But once again, the evidence have come out, and it has now been proven that, we've had these disinformation campaigns, and now you see, of course, Philippines, very, very, leaning much more to the United States, and really, getting in an escalation over the South China Sea. What do you make of this, these allegations against China, Alex, that China is the big enabler for Russia in this war?
It's a good excuse to shift the policy here. As I said in many live streams before, America is running out of nations to invade. And this is the next one. This is the next cash cow for them. They got to keep the military-industrial complex going. This is no joke. We are talking about serious, aircraft carriers floating around in the Taiwan Straits. I don't see any Chinese ships on the west coast of the United States, but they're there, they're preparing, they're getting ready. And let's not underestimate propaganda. Let's not underestimate propaganda. Not what you would feel Chinese propaganda, which we're always accused of, but the media, when it has a game plan and it's directed from the government, you will see how fast the media will turn on China. You could see it already starting to shift.
Right.
They're bringing the talking heads on. China's a threat. Are you sure? Yeah, it's a threat. And we're seeing that escalate week after week after week. New reasons for it. Some of them are just absolutely crazy.
Right.
The way they talk about, China's Taiwan, the way they talk about, the people are angry at each other. And if you ask the average, person here, they're happy brothers and sisters.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think I have a lot of theories about Taiwan that I've made in, many presentations and many live streams as well. And I think there's a lot of people don't really understand just how close that connection is between Taiwan and China. A fun fact for many people out there, Xi Jinping, he was in the Fujian province for 19 years.
Yeah.
And one of his primary objectives was really facilitating more business between Taiwan and mainland China. Another interesting fact that I was talking to someone just the other week here in China, and they said, the problem with Taiwan as well is that it is so reliant on mainland China. It has a lot of business between mainland China as well. So it's not like they can simply cut off their relationship with China either. So it's they have this very unusual relationship. The status quo has worked for many, many decades, and I'm always a firm believer that with the Taiwan situation, it definitely is in the ball is in the United States court, because it's really, do you want to escalate this or not?
Yeah, I think they do.
And the simple thing is that we've seen this in geopolitics is, certain countries have established red lines and existential threats. Russia made it very clear, and this is something that John Mearsheimer, many of you would follow John Mearsheimer, big fan of him we're both big fans of Mearsheimer, who correctly predicted exactly what would happen to Ukraine. But he said, for years, Russia has said, Ukraine joining NATO is an existential threat to our existence, and that is a red line. And a lot of U.S. policymakers don't like that. They don't like it when you bring up that point. They'll say, Cyrus, Alex, you can't bring up that point. That's not up to Russia.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's their red line. And every country has their own red line. Every country has their own, exactly what's going to push them over the edge. And there's certainly ones for the United States as well. You're not going to be able to put, China's not coming to Cuba and establishing a Chinese military base, 90 miles from my home state of Florida. The United States government will not tolerate that. They would look at that as an existential threat, and they would stop that. And but we could flip that around and have the same argument.
Sure.
Well, China and Cuba are independent countries. They have a great relationship. What's to stop them from doing that? That's America.
America, and you got to look at track records. We have to look back many years. These countries that have been invaded or stripped of their assets. They're finally waking up because they're getting new partners like China that is investing in the Belt and Road. A lot of people think the Belt and Road is just the logistical lines that are helping China sell its goods into these channels.
Right.
That's not the case. I mean, these lines that are connecting railways, they're connecting, helping people. You were recently talking about Laos in one of the films the other day here. Talking about a new railway coming in there, the farmers growing more stuff. I mean, this is a big country, okay?
Yeah.
1.5 billion people. They continually, every day that they get up there, they have these 5-year plans. They want to move forward. They want to continually progress. A lot more work to do here. Trust me, a lot more work to do. But these smaller nations that used to be really threatened or felt threatened, even on the international stage, by the collective West nations, are saying, wait a minute. We've seen what's happened here in the last couple of years.
Right.
We've seen the escalation of sanctions on a nation.
Right.
We've seen you try to close a bank system down in Russia. We've seen you try to close its citizens from traveling to European countries. We've seen the international criminal courts file charges against the leaders of the country. We've banned your airspace.
Right.
Your airlines have got to fly around a whole different routes.
Right.
They've tried everything they could to dismantle and regime change in Russia, and hasn't worked. And these other nations are saying, okay, here's a window. We're going to partner with these guys, even though we're told not to partner with the Chinese. Right. We're going to partner with these guys. We're going to trade in their currencies. Yes, we're going to bring our nations out of poverty, because certain countries that had decades to help us never did. They just wanted us to live in poverty.
Right.
Now we're seeing that. Now the BRI is getting into that second, third gear here. And this is what we call diplomacy. These are nations that are,
Well, the interesting, I was reading an article just this morning, actually, where it said one of these, like Solomon Islands and the smaller island Pacific nations, you'll see a trend is that all of them are shifting towards China. And basically what one of the presidents of these countries, what he had said, is he said, the difference is that with China, we can always get a meeting with a high-level government official whenever we need it. And that's something that developed Western nations will never do for us. Because, and that was an interesting one where I made a video a couple of years ago actually about, why did the Solomon Islands choose China over the United States? And what it was a simple case of too little, too late. Basically, the Solomon Islands, for example, they asked the United States, can you come and establish an embassy here? Can you build relations? U.S. said, you're not big enough. You're not a priority. You're not a big deal. And China came in, they built a 3-story embassy. They said, hey, we'll establish these diplomatic relations with you. We will help you out. And as soon as China did that, U.S. ambassadors, they flew in all these ambassadors there were like 6 guys from different posts, and they all went to the Solomon Islands. They said, hey, we'll match it. We're ready to build an embassy now. And it's just like, well, of course you are, because China's here now. You had no interest in us when we asked you, but yet when China comes, now you want us to pick you over China. But you know what? We don't want it. Forget it. We're moving with China. And again, this is, some of these very silly foreign policy decisions that we see. And I'm going to kind of bring us into another war, Alex, because this is important, because I want everybody to understand this. It's very difficult for the United States and NATO to comment on Russia, to comment on China, when we are the biggest enablers of this absolute war and genocide that is happening in Gaza. And so you have this double standard that I think is really coming back to bite. And I think this is why you have someone like Vladimir Putin, who is saying, when you want to say, hey, you've invaded a country, you should be standing for war crimes, but yet we're sending billions of dollars to Israel, who is invading another area. Best case scenario, you could probably say that would be an apartheid state. More reality is it's more closer to a genocide of what's really happening there. So you have this tremendous contradiction that really undermines the whole credibility. And I think once you start getting away from this bubble of Western media, this bubble of being, if we're just staying in Canada and the U.S. and we're only listening to Western media, all we think is NATO's the best. NATO's the best. But you start seeing around the world, you start seeing people actually look at it very differently.
We do need to pay attention to what these media outlets do say, because whether you believe it or not, they do still have power. And they have power of persuasion, whether it's in print media, whether it's in online media, whether it's in traditional cable satellite TV. All these channels will be ramping up here over the next, 4 or 5 months here as we march towards November. But we have seen some pretty startling results here. We saw the UK government completely change hands. I mean, wow, what a shift, okay?
Yeah,
that's changed. That could be the Zelensky effect.
Right.
And, the allure of Zelensky, as Alex Christoforou says, they get a whiff of Zelensky number 5,
right.
And the next thing you know, they're voted out of office. So this is really going to be, a difficult next few months here. You mentioned Gaza, you mentioned Israel. I mean, these headlines are numbing, but we've all got used to them. And I feel that it's unfortunate that has gone off the headlines.
Right.
I still think it's an issue that seriously needs to be dealt with. What's your thoughts if a Trump becomes the next president? Do you think he has the power to say, you know what, I can make all these wars end pretty much overnight?
I'm not very optimistic about it, Alex, because I think at the end of the day, I think there's a very big irony at play here, because, for example, a lot of the youth in America are not happy with Joe Biden and his supporting of the war in, Israel, between Israel and Palestine, in the war in Gaza. But at the end of the day, I think many people would actually argue and say that Donald Trump is even more pro-Israel. He is the one that actually did move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, for example. So I think I'm not really optimistic in the Israel-Gaza one, to be honest. I think that I'm more optimistic in the certainly the war in Ukraine. But of course, the critics are going to say, the flip side of that argument is that, hey, Donald Trump is very warm to Putin. Right? He's much more friendlier with Putin, and he perhaps is going to strike a deal that is more leaning towards Putin's favor. Where I would argue again is that, if I was Donald Trump, and this is something that, if he does win, I hope that he would say, I want Zelensky and Putin, and I want you guys right here.
I think that's what his plans are.
Yeah. So I mean, if that's the case, then I think, I don't know. I mean, is Zelensky going to get in a room with Putin, or
Well, I think
you're going to have to. I mean, if Trump's president, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have to, because at the end of the day, without the United States, Ukraine doesn't, Ukraine's done. I mean, we've kept that war going, and but it does seem, again, it is our responsibility now. And I don't know if you saw this article. I was reading another article. I'm going to put all the links to these articles down in the description, because there's a lot that we've referenced here today. But there was an article written, and it was fascinating, Alice, because it's basically everybody that has extensive experience with Russia. So it's former U.S. ambassadors to Russia. And there was, I forget the names of everybody, but it was about 5 people that had served the United States, and specifically with Russia-U.S. relations. And they basically said, if the war's not going to be won, it's your moral responsibility to at least engage and try to get a peace settlement. And again, these are the brightest minds that study Russia relations.
Sure.
Okay, Russia's not our expertise. We're on the ground more in China. We're a little bit, certainly for me at least, I'm much more up to speed on what's going on in China. It's a passion. It's a country I've been visiting for 17 years. But I would love to, when former U.S. ambassadors to Russia come out and say that it's our moral responsibility to engage and to try to get a forced settlement, I'm going to be listening to those voices.
Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of these conflicts over the last 50 to 70 years have ended with negotiations.
It has to.
And they sit down and they hammer out this deal. Now, this is where you underestimate Trump, okay?
Yeah.
Now, Trump, he will go in there and he will just say, okay, get him on the line. You two get here now.
Right.
Why I'm Donald Trump the president. I know you guys might laugh at that, but I'm just, giving you a scenario on how he is. I mean, gotta remember, this is a guy that walked across the South Korean and North Korean border to shake hands with Kim Jong-un. I mean, impressive day in history.
Right.
And he was that close, I think, to getting that country to disarm itself. So this guy, he's looking at this as a business transaction. And he's saying,
art of the deal.
Billions, billions spent, billions die, less, he might just say, okay, how about billions to rebuild your country, to make it a great country again, or whatever.
Right.
And he has that power of persuasion, whether you like it or not. You might say, oh, I don't like Trump or whatever, but millions of people do. Millions of people will vote for him.
Yeah.
And the thing that we have to really watch here is who is going to be, if he gets in, and this is what's really hurt him in the last term, was who is going to be in his administration. Because some of the people in that administration were absolutely terrible. On Mike Pompeo was just an absolute diabolical, Secretary of State.
Super aggressive, war hawk, and
so he's got to change his
hawk. I mean, it's going to be a tough one, Alex. I think, there's a couple of things that we say in the United States is we always have, it's a choice between bad and bad. It's a choice, but it's elect and regret is a common thing. You'll always hear that election season. Those are the phrases that are coming out. Again, I have a little bit different opinion than you.
We always had,
which is always good, to have in a good discussion. But I'm not very optimistic about the election. I'm not very much looking forward to voting. I'm not looking forward to the outcome because I don't think either is the right choice for America. I don't think either person is the change that we need to see in America. That's my official stance on it. But at the end of the day, one of those two is going to lead forward. I do think I'm still going to, you have my prediction. I still think Biden's going to be on the ticket. It's going to be interesting. I don't know. I mean, but what's fun, Alex, is we're doing a new live stream here where it's different, right? We're on the streets here. We're we're wanting to talk about something a little bit different, but we're going to be ramping up. I mean, we're going to be doing more streams, and obviously, like I said, the last 6 months of 2024, it's going to get wild.
Yeah,
it's going to get wild.
We're going to be there for you guys.
It's going to get crazy. We're going to be here for you guys. More live streams, more discussions. I think we're going to have a really big kind of election 2024 show that we're going to do.
It would be a good idea. I want to really bring the audience back in a little bit more. We will have the capability for call-ins.
Yeah.
And I think we should hear from the people. It's important. We're always told by media polls or news agencies, this person's leading in the polls. Maybe let's hear it from some of these viewers can call into us and
well, I know,
we'll bring him on.
I know, being on the ground, living full time in the United States, I tell you, the U.S. is the most polarized I've ever seen it, and it's really, it's going to be a close election. I mean, I think what you have to remember is Donald Trump in 2020 got 75 million votes. He ran a good campaign, and he came very close to winning that election. And the reality is that here we are 4 years later, and the United States it's a very polarized country. We're very split down the middle on pretty much anything. You talk about abortion, gun rights, you talk about your president choice, your party, and it's a very national security, NATO, whatever it is, Ukraine, Israel, all of these are basically split down the middle 50-50. And what's really interesting is this is an interesting stat that I saw, is that interracial relationships in America. Okay, interracial relationships, all right? 97% of Americans are in favor of that, which is obviously great. My wife is Chinese, so I would certainly support that as well. So interracial marriages. So basically, that is not a problem anymore in America. But inter-party marriages now is the big that is the big thing. So over 70% of people now in America say I would not support my child marrying somebody in a different political party.
That is polarizing. Wow.
So that's the issue. I want people to really understand. So it's an interesting one where I think we really need to get past this. Like I'm more optimistic for 2028, 2032 that we can get some a little bit more stability in the fact of in our presidential candidates, because the world quite frankly needs a good U.S. president. But I don't think that people that are in their 80s are good U.S. presidents.
It's not just about being a president. I mean, this bloody election. You and I had this great conversation a couple of weeks ago where you said to me, "Look, Alex, if one of these candidates stands up and says to the people, listen, I can get your gas bill down. I can get your food costs down.
Yeah.
I can get your rent down. Man, would a lot of Americans sleep better overnight. And those are just magical words, Cyrus. That has always resonated in my brain here the last couple of weeks. I'm waiting for them to say, we're going to get your gas. You know, none of these promises, like, we're going to go to war. We're going to hammer these guys. Yes, NATO. I've made NATO stronger since I've gotten power. No. How about, guys, alleviate poverty here? I mean,
absolutely.
Fight this epidemic with, they have a lot of really fentanyl issues in the United States.
Big time.
Immigration policy, of course, that's going to be on the ticket, always is on the ticket, the border.
Yeah.
And once again, I think if you can convince people with a structured reality game plan that you're going to get those price of goods down, those groceries, it's affecting everybody. I'm hearing it everywhere. Everybody's just saying. Lena McLeod, for example, and then we'll move on to what you want to talk about. Talked about the cost of living in Canada. She went home to see her mom the other day. She said, my mother was already in, for a one-bedroom, Calgary, $1,500. It was quite high. Went home, boom, $600 a month rent increase. Effective within the next 60 days. Go. Just like, wow.
Canada, I mean, inflation is really crippling, North America, both U.S. and Canada, struggling big time. But I think that is a key one, because at the end of the day, I'm going to just call a number. I'm going to say around 70% of Americans, they're more concerned about the day-to-day lives. So if you have a candidate, whether that's Trump or Biden, who can really say, hey, we're going to lower those gas prices, we're going to lower those grocery bills, we're going to lower the cost of living, that's, at the end of the day, that's the biggest factor. And I think that's where, we always hear this kind of America First policy, which is an interesting one, because, if we were putting America first, we would be, having better health insurances, we would have better healthcare industries, we'd be having, certainly, be tackling these, gas and food and all these are the real issues that Americans are really interested in. Vast majority of Americans, I mean, could not find Ukraine on a map. I mean, just without a doubt. I mean, they'd have no idea where even to look. But it's going to be very interesting, Alex, and we're going to keep covering it. As we move forward to that November 5th date, and I've got a vote to cast. So I'll be voting. I'll be doing my patriotic duty and certainly voting. It's going to be interesting. I'm excited. Joe Biden saying he's going to stay in the race. I mean, he's still got another debate against Trump.
I know. It's going to be interesting.
So, I mean, you imagine the verbal gaffes that are going to come off of that, because, I mean, again, even one of a simple verbal gaffe that he said here in China, many times, is he said that.
Yes. We don't even need to say, do we?
I mean, many times. So, I mean, we don't even need to repeat that. But Alex, I think it was a fantastic show today.
So we're going to do more of this kind of stuff, guys.
Absolutely.
Like I said, there's going to be a little bit more interactive on our live streams.
Yeah.
Bear with us when we start to gear up. Things are going to get pretty exciting, and I look forward to talking to you guys from this beautiful country of China. I'm going to be bouncing around the country too. Hello, brother.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be bouncing around the country as well. There might be times where I'm in Beijing or Shanghai.
Absolutely.
And these feet are on the ground getting, pretty much up-to-date information. You and I chat on a daily basis.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what's exciting, everybody, so many of you have been following my journey. I've been back in China for 6 weeks now.
Awesome.
And it's something that, we're going to be coming back to China every summer and spending a lot more time here. I've got another trip back to Asia in the fall. So I'm going to be moving forward, I'm going to be spending a lot more time in Asia, which I'm excited because, Alex, I always say, if you're not willing to jump on a plane and come here and actually experience China, you can't have a proper opinion about it, because you're never going to understand it from watching, this YouTube channel or another YouTube channel or listening to media. Come and experience it for yourself. I guarantee you, China is going to be completely different. Even in my last vlog, people said, hey, I can't believe you guys can walk around China with a camera and not record. Well,
do people think this is a green screen?
Nah.
Maybe they do.
Yeah.
Right? 1 sec.
Yeah.
Maybe they do. Sorry, I don't know. Do they? I have to do a green screen test for you guys.
Green screen test. But I want everybody to understand as well is that we're here in a very protected place in China. I talked to the security guys here, and he said, no problem. Go ahead and film. No issue at all. I mean, as you can see, we've been doing a live stream now for a long time. And anyways,
I'll leave it up to you. I'll head behind the camera. You close her down for us, okay?
All right. So guys, anyways, new thing that we're doing here. So excited to be back in Guangzhou. This is my wife's home city. We're back here. We got some exciting vlogs coming up for the channel. So much to explore. And as always, I want to thank you all for your continued support. And we're going to see you in our next live stream very soon. My name is Cyrus, signing off for Alex, and we'll see you guys in our next video soon.